So we are going to get started. Today we have Dr. Troy Anderson and Dr. Dion Littles here with us today to talk about managing family finances and family resource management.
All right, so good afternoon to everyone. Welcome to our viewers online. My name again is Troy Anthony Anderson. I am the extension agent over at Calvert County. My focus area is on financial wellness. And so I am here to serve our community in terms of not only promoting and publicizing information around financial education, but also focusing on consumer education and personal finance as well, and going more in depth into research around financial technology. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about family resource management, which closes out the series looking at our financial wellness for leading in from spring up until now. And one of the things that we're going to be sharing about today is what exactly is family resource management and how does that tie into our finances or nutrition or health or wellness and all of these other areas. So with me today is Dr. Dion Little. She's a faculty member at the University of Maryland Extension as well. I'm going to give her a few minutes to introduce herself.
Good afternoon, everyone. How are you all doing? So I am Dr. Dion Littles. I am brand new to St. Mary's County. I am the agent at St. Mary's County Extension Office. My area of expertise is food, nutrition, health, and wellness. So I am here with Dr. Troy today to pretty much just go along with what he has planned and then talk a little bit about what it looks like, especially now in the summer that you guys are navigating the heat. And how does that work along with your health? So Dr. Troy is going to be talking and I'll chime in a little bit more. So I'm glad to be here in St. Mary's County, and I'm looking forward to partnering with a library so you'll be seeing much more of me.
All right, thank you, Dr. Littles. So family resource management, you might have heard of it before, you might have not heard of it before, but we're turning the usually serious discussion into a lively conversation today to look at several content areas that we want to focus on. One, what is the function of the family as it relates to family resource management? And you may hear me use the word interchangeably, the acronym FRM, for that family roles. Spend some time looking and examining Maslow's hierarchy of human needs and how does that relate to even moving from the bottom to self-actualization from a financial perspective, family and goal setting, spending some time on looking at management itself, what are the processes of management, and also we will bring back our guest faculty, Dr. Dion Littles, a little bit later as well, and then we'll close for some questions. So what exactly is family resource management? Anybody online want to share? Anybody in our audience want to share? Nobody yet. So let me draw our minds a little bit. So one of the things about family resource management is it's the everyday action that pretty much keeps the family cogs well oiled in terms of what are we going to pull human resources wise, what are we going to pull non-human resources wise, and how are we going to use those different resources to make sure that we're empowering our families for success or to meet the necessary needs that are out there within our family. So when we think about, let's say, for example, foods, how are we getting together and what are we deliberating in terms of what is going to be the meal plan for today? How much are we allotting? How much are we spending for each of these different items? And if we go over budget, what does that look like? But also we want to look at what is the nutritional value of all of that. So it really comes down to when you think about family resource management, it's really that sit down point where you sit down with everybody who is in that household to navigate the processes of not only the financial part, where you look at the non-human, but also those human resources that need to be pulled together and capitalized on as well. So here's a quick definition for family resource management. And you should have had the opportunity to see the PowerPoint online. Did we get that shared? Oh, okay, awesome. All right. So traditionally, when we think about family resource management, we used to refer to it as what is considered personal finance, where it was just about the budgeting aspect. But now we've gone into several other areas where we can look at it from the consumer perspective, looking at it from consumer practice and the environment. So in this essence, we look at it from, let's say, for example, consumer patterns, and we try to find what is the pattern that is out there where people are making purchases towards. So if you ever heard the terminology, the supply of demand, before, love, supply and demand, you've heard about it before, yeah? Okay, so some people have heard, some people haven't heard. Well, if you've never heard before, one of the things about that is companies or organizations or stores, they're going to be looking at what is really needed in the economy at this point in time. So let's think about our car dealerships, for example. Are cars really needed right now? Right? Is there a need for a car? And if there's a need for a car, maybe it's a rural community, we don't have access to buses, no public transportation, so that's why that need comes about for making sure everybody has their own individual vehicle to move them from point A to point B. Now, it dives in a little bit deeper in terms of understanding what that needs is now. What type of cars do we need, right? And how are we gonna meet that supply and supply those cars out to different families? And also looking at, can they afford this? So we look at the affordability as well. As you can't just decide, you know what, we're gonna put cars out there and cars are gonna be selling for $50,000. But everybody in this rural community is making under $20,000. And that's gross. So we're not even thinking about net, because when you think about net, you know that all of those federal tax and other withholdings are being pulled out, so we probably end up with like $12,000, $10,000 after taxes. So we think about all of these different things and all of these different avenues that play or factors that play into consideration in terms of understanding consumer practice and the environment and making sure that our individuals and families avoid wasteful practices, which could also be harmful to both themselves as well as the environment, so that they're not taking a hit at the end of the day. So when we think again, going back to family resource management, we want to make sure that the family is being frugal, in other words. They're getting the best and they're capitalizing 100% on whatever budget they're following or whatever money they have committed to. And they're not just, going off of whatever the gross income is, but they're going off of whatever that net pay is. That means that the amount that they're actually taking home. A lot of times we, and especially young people that I've spoken to, will see advertisements at McDonald's, Panda Express, and they're like, you know what, we're doing a job and you can get up to $64,000 and you drive and you're like, whoa, $54,000, that's amazing. That's a great starting salary for me. Not recognizing that I'm not taking home $54,000 from the get-go. That is just being advertised as what is going to be your gross. So it means that Uncle Joe hasn't started taking out any money yet, right? And also, when you think about that, you also have to think about local taxes that are going to be coming out and being pulled from that. So when you think about that as well, you also think, what is my organization offering? Are they offering a match program for insurance that hasn't been pulled out? Insurance is totally different from the state and federal withholdings. Are they going to be pulling out for pension? Are they going to be pulling out for anything else? Medicare, Blue Cross, or any of those other stuff that we might have to pay back, or we might have to decide we have an investment and we're pulling those out. So that $54,000 at the end of the day is not really $54,000. It's probably going to run you like 20 something. So you want to be sure that, with family resource management, I'm budgeting for the 24 and not for the 54 here, right? So it's providing you with a more realistic picture of what exactly are your resources and how are you using these resources wisely. Another one looking at the consumer goods and also the quality of life that can be provided for persons. And this looks at investment strategies that are out there. Anybody here have any investment plans that you put into place already for yourself? You haven't started investing? Okay, do not let 30 hit you and you have not started investing, trust me. Because when 40 hits you, you're gonna be like, that was 10 years worth of investment that I could have, should have, but I don't have right now, right? And it's really good if you start looking at it from your 20s also and start investing. One of the things that you look at is, let's say, for example, you put on $100 a month. $100 a month equal how much for the year? 1,200 for 30 years. How much is that? I mean, from your 20s, 30s, 40s. See how much you could have invested already? And nobody's 100 was just like a minimum here. So you can decide what works for you, right? We know we all have talked about the budget with the 50-30-20 plan. If that might not work for you with savings in terms of 20% going to savings, it might be 10% that works for you, might be 5% that works for you. But whenever you find the extra money, you can always go in and decide, I'm going to invest a little bit extra this month. Similar to if you have loans, let's say, for example, you have a car loan or you have a house loan. Similar to you want to pull that interest down or lower the interest in any way, you're going to go in and try to pay the principal down at any point in time. So you're not just, you know what, I got this mortgage and I'm just meeting the minimum every month of $1,000 or $1,500. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to lower my payments down in terms of the years that I have to pay back that APR. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to decrease the principal. So I might pay $1,000 immediately right now per month for my monthly mortgage, but I'm also hitting an extra $500 to decrease the principal. That lowers the amount of years. If I had a 30-year mortgage, I could have lowered that to 15 years over a period of time. It works the same way with your car also, trying to decrease that principal. So always check what the principal is, and if you can pay a little bit extra each month on the principal to decrease that, that's an awesome way to, again, work that out within the family and the dynamics of making sure that you're using those resources as well to improve the quality of life. All right. So let us talk a little bit about what the functions of the family really is as it relates to family resource management. And I've just listed 6 on here. One talks about procreation, socialization, providing basic needs, transmitting culture, and regulating kinship, and also conferring statuses. Anybody ever heard of these functions before? Functions to our family? No? I think What do you think procreation is? How does that serve a purpose in our families as a function? Yes, you want to answer, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I don't know, maybe, as far as like uh, lineage, I don't know, the more
Definitely.
family members, the more income somehow.
It also helps with that also because I was talking to a group, a family the other day, and they were like trying to work out. They were like, my 18-year-old, they just got finished, but they're gonna take a gap year, and they're gonna work to save towards college because they have this much in funding right now. So they're going to help to offset some of the costs, but they're going to use that gap year to go ahead and get a part-time job so that they can fill in where it's needed to make some investment moves over the year and kind of increase what it is that they have already done to help with that transition into college. So procreation here represents that lineage that you talked about, but it also ensures continuation or continuity within that family itself. So
That's what
a lot of guys would be like, yes, I really want a son. What comes out of that? Having a male child.
With the daughter?
When they get a male child versus if they get a female child, what's the difference? You talked about lineage just now. What?
It
What's the-
continues.
It continues. Their name
Their
continues
name, yeah.
because their last name again doesn't change if they get married, but the female's name does change when they get married. So they want to ensure that there is some kind of level of continuity. So people will be like, yes, I really want a boy. So that can continue. And then it's like, vice versa as well. But careful planning of family size also is another aspect of good management. And so when we look at family resource management here, it's also about planning what that family size will look like and how are we going to meet the needs and what is there out there in terms of community resources that can also help us to meet those needs. So there are several community resources that we can think of that will help us with even the functions of the family. Can anybody identify one such community resource for me? I'll give you a hint, we're sitting in one.
Library.
The library. The library provides so much information, so much free classes, a wealth of books and all of these stuff. You can come in, get help with resume writing, courses that are offered, after school care that is offered as well. You guys are, like kiddies programs also here at the library.
So we offer kids programs.
Okay.
Generally, we do need the adults there too, unless they're older than 13.
Yeah, so again, our library serves as one of those community resources that is untapped. A lot of people don't tap into these community resources. It's like, I gotta go to the grocery store quick, but I just need an hour without this kid. Drop him at the library, drop her at the library. They got a reading program there. They got amazing stuff there. These are untapped community resources. So not saying that you guys should come drop your kids off at the library, but these are great resources that sometimes we don't tap into as families that can strengthen us on an economic basis, right? And so we have to look at that instead of, I'm gonna have to go pay somebody for an hour to do something or to watch this kid versus I could have allowed them to get involved in that program that is offered at the library, a reading program for 2 hours or something. I want to be honest, I do that with baseball. It's like I'm gonna drop my kid off at baseball and I know he's gonna be there for 2 hours and the coach said it's fine, I got him. And I'm like, okay, some time for me, right? I don't have to pay for daycare at this point in time. Coach got me, right? So another resource there. So you can think about other community resources. Even the church serves as a community resource as well. And I think that's another untapped resource that persons don't necessarily. There's Sunday school offered, there's VBS and some other church programs that are offered, especially during the summer when kids are home from school and you're like, I can't find the budget to send them to camp. But VBS is free and VBS is for 2-3 weeks and these church people are so excited to get kids come. So it's like, man, I'm gonna just drop my kid off at VBS and they're gone for the whole week. That's amazing. Now you just saved yourself. So you have to think about what resources, when I say community resources, why? What community resources are literally available when you're doing family resource management, and how does those community resources help you to move your family forward, but also save you as well, whether it's going to be in daycare, whether it's going to be in childcare, or whether it's going to be in some other aspect of finances that you could put that somewhere else. Another area or function that we can look at also is going to be socialization. How do you think socialization play a part here with family resource management? Anybody online can feel free to chime in. Anybody in the room can feel free to chime in. So we can't teach everything, pretty much. Socialization here represents that. Our family can't teach everything, right? And especially if you move from another culture, and let's say, for example, you came to America for the first time, you can't teach everything. You don't understand the American culture and the American ways. The best way is to immerse yourself in culture in order to understand what is the cultural changes or the climate of that particular place. It's similar when you get to a new job. You don't just go in there, you're like, I don't know what I'm doing and I'm not asking any questions. But you have to ask questions at some point in time, right? So you're immersing yourself in the job to learn more about it. It's the same way when you get into a community, you have to immerse yourself in the various activities and the various groups and programs that are being offered as well. Because again, that whole transition of values are going to come into some stuff that maybe you're not teaching at home. They're going to get it at the library. Maybe they're going to get it at schools. At school, well, we didn't even mention school as a community resource. That's also another community resource that is available for persons as well. So there's a change in fulfilling functions. And so when we look at what are those functions in terms of socialization itself within our family, we might not be able to provide all of those aspects of socialization, but we can get them in our communities as well. And that will help us to strengthen. Let's say, for example, even coming out today to interact with this particular program that is being offered is another means, not just to interact, but also to socialize with both the presenter and the other persons that are both online and in the room to find out, what is a shortcut that you're doing? maybe you know something that I don't know, or maybe the person next to you have been doing it a little bit differently, like, wow, that's a great idea. I never thought about it that way, right? It's like I said to people, I don't turn my heat on immediately when spring ends. When winter ends and spring comes in, I don't usually turn my AC on. Sorry. What I do is I wait a little bit before until it starts getting hot. Then that's when I'm turning my AC on. Now my kid's like, oh my God, I really need to get some AC. I'm like, you know what? We have the little marinas, we have the white beaters. Go put one of those on, you'll be fine. And it's the same thing, vice versa. When the heat time comes around, I'm not turning the heat on until it's literally like really cold. I'm keeping it off as long as I can. Fall does not mean that it is that cold. Sometimes you can open the windows, and sometimes within family resource management, we have to think creative. We have to think, how can we save some money? And those are different aspects and different means that we can do that. And that just helps us to lead into providing what is our basic needs. Because sometimes not everybody in every situation is able to meet what the basic needs are. Right? And what are the community resources that are out there to provide basic needs? I know for us, as I said before, I oversee programs in Calvert, and one of the stuff that they do over at Calvert is they have a C4 program that does a matching for persons who are looking to make purchases in houses. They also offer rental assistance as well. They also offer courses and programs within the community through their library system as well, which again, Nicole here offers here. So there's multiple avenues to look at what are those basic needs and how you can provide them, because even if they're not providing them directly, like, here's that, I noticed driving in, and I will say that there was a food pantry box outside. We don't think about these things. I mean, somebody's there and they don't even know that that exists. Here is an opportunity for a family who doesn't have it to come now, and they can show up. There's a food pantry right outside the library. They can take what they need and leave what is the motto on the thing? Do you remember the I just read it.
Take what you need, leave what you can.
Yeah, take what you need, leave what you can. And that's a way of meeting and providing basic needs for persons in our community. And so we have to look at what are those avenues of creativity that we can cut back on, or we can capitalize on in order to make sure that we are meeting our goals at the end of the month. And it's not just your financial goals that we're talking about, but we're talking about goals that will also help with your mindset and mind shift as well. Another area to look at is how we transmit our culture as well. And we transmitted our culture here. We can look at customs, we can look at beliefs, but we can also tap into different areas of our community that does that. I referred to religious affiliations earlier, but there are also different programs that relate to that. I know, like in DC, you have like different programs that the various embassies put on. So those are awesome opportunities to try out and check out in terms of looking at transmitting culture. But culture does determine people in general, and how they spend money does influence them. I don't know if you're like, I've ever traveled overseas before, but one of the first things when I traveled overseas, I was recently in Jamaica, just before the hurricane hit. And the first thing, every time somebody said, this was the cost of an item, I would try to calculate it in my mind, like, how much am I really spending here? So I'm trying to do the exchange. I'm like, no, that's just too much. That's too much money. So when somebody would be like, a mango is for $10 there, I'm like, $10, that's $10 times 100 and something dollar. No, they're trying to rip me off here. It's about knowing exchange and what that currency is as well, but also making sure that you understand, for example, when I travel, what is the exchange rate? And am I spending too much? Am I spending too little? And if I'm spending too much, how can I cut back on those? And a lot of people don't make a budget before they even travel, and that's one of the biggest things. Always think about making a budget before you travel. If you can just use one card the entire time that you're traveling, that is amazing. Because what happens is then you can track those expenses for yourself on that one particular card, and chances are, if you're like me, all my cards are linked to just one bank, so it's like multiple different capital ones. So if they saw like three different cards of me using three different cards, easily get locked. I know you can call in and tell them that, I'm overseas, but sometimes it provides a red flag for them on the other side. So you also have to look at that as well. Another one, and on here is regulating kinship and also conferring status. And when we look at that, we look at two things. One is within families, we think about focus on ascribed and achieved status. Now, our ascribed status is pretty much what is given to us at birth. So let's say, for example, if we own something, or let's say, for example, the king had a child, that child now automatically becomes prince or princess, right? That becomes what is considered your ascribed. It's ascribed to you. So anything that we're going to get passed on from our parents is going to be an ascribed status here as it relates to conference status. However, the achieved status is where family resource management really comes in, because the achieved status here will refer to the fact that you now have to encourage your kids or your family or find mediums or avenues that they can go back now and go through the education system to get a high school diploma or a GED or a degree. And all of these things cost money, which again comes back to why it's important to start investing early and not waiting until it's too late to start investing. Because when you get to that part and you look back and you start working it out, it's like, if you're like me, I'm gonna look back, I'm like, that was 20 years I could have started doing that. Yeah, this is how much I could have had. Darn it, didn't work. Right? So that's one of the reasons why I do stress that a whole lot. But all of these as functions to the family relates back to what I like to look at as Maslow's hierarchy of human needs, because Maslow talks a whole lot. Anybody knows who Maslow is or studied Maslow before? You did? What was it?
Just the hierarchy.
You know the hierarchy. Okay, can you walk me through the hierarchy quick?
Sure. So the base level is that kind of basic needs, like you need food, you need shelter, you need water, that kind of stuff. And then as you go up the hierarchy, your needs become a little more complex and abstract. So beyond safety, you get to where it says love and belonging. That's like your relationships. Esteem is how you see yourself, and self-actualization, something the library loves because it's all about learning and trying to better yourself as a human and in your community.
Yeah, so when we take on a family, when we're single and we're out here hustling for the first time, as a single person, it's like, you don't have to think about, how you're spending money. It's just you, and you're able to just do as you like. You can go to the restaurant every day, right? You can get paid and you can go to McDonald's every Friday. But when you start a family and you decide, I'm married and I have kids, it is not the same, because if you do that drive-through, you can't just buy a number one. No, you gotta buy a number one plus the kids' meal, plus you gotta buy something for your spouse. So you gotta think, I'm expanding my budget at this point in time. Do I have the finances to reach all of those? When you're single, you don't think about those things. You go in the clothing store, you're like, oh my God, they got a sale, right? And you're excited. I'm the first person to see the clearance. I'm like, what, they got a clearance going on today? I don't need it, but I'm gonna get it today, right? We go wear it at some point in time. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of people don't recognize when they look at the physiological needs. Sometimes based on our family dynamics, we will go ahead and overspend sometimes in that physiological part. And then a few weeks come and we recognize, hey, we out of money. We're waiting for the next direct deposit to hit at that point in time because we've overspent. And as you said, you go on to each of the level, but one of the biggest ones is moving into self-actualization, where it's all about capitalizing on the bottom part and building as you go along, meeting each of those needs of safety, love and belonging, and esteem as well. And those just refer back to both time within the family itself, but also time within the community and how you're meeting the needs of your own family within resource management. So there's an economic function here to look at, and that economic function is that every family member is seen as a consumer, right? Because each family member now is going to serve a purpose within that consumer chain. Just as I said, you go to the drive-through, you have kids in the car, there's no way you just buy the number one and driving through there, right? You might have to buy the McFlurry, and God bless if they put a toy on there, you're gonna have to get that one, they don't feel like they need to come back and come around, and we have to collect all the toys. Yeah, it's one of those things. So there comes an economic function, and that's what I really wanted to get to from here. All right, so why do we need family resource management? One of the things is it helps us to improve our quality of life because, as I said before, it helps us to weigh out the pros and the cons. It helps us to examine what our wants are, what our needs are, and what do those look like. It also look at helping us to be prepared and also to be empowered in terms of taking on a budget, tracking our expenses, weighing the pros and cons, and seeing what works and what doesn't work. But also with family resource management, we can find the help that we need within our community. So there are resources that are out there, such as classes that are offered through our extension agency, or you can have consults with extension agents in our community. You can visit our local library, you can visit the church, you can visit the local schools, you can visit the community resources building. So all of these places are going to provide you information in terms of making sure that there's an even profit measure across the board, but especially within available programs that can help you to be empowered as individuals and as families, and that the family dynamic that also changes. Some of them also provide trainings, tax credit, subsidies, scholarships, and rebates as well, which is great. So you have to make sure that you know what your community offers and how you can capitalize on that. One of the biggest one is even with housing. How many people know that, within your, if you live in a rural area, you can capitalize on 100% down payment through like the USDA program, or you can capitalize on the FHA program for housing so that you can go ahead and purchase a home. All you have to do is, again, look up the USDA eligibility program and you can check that out. But a lot of people don't know what our programs that are in our community, whether it's rural or urban, and how those work for us. So it's really important when you're doing family resource management to sit down and think about what those are. All right, another one here looks at rise in the number of scams and fraud. But I did go over a little bit of scams and fraud before, so I'm not going to touch that. But also looking at how we make decisions, but being careful of the decisions that we make as we go along. Everything that comes out that says it's a discount might not necessarily be a discount. Sometimes those are scams, sometimes those are frauds. And so we had looked at different types of frauds earlier back in spring, but making sure that when you're doing or conducting business, you've actually checked that you're using the correct banking site or banking app and not using something that you got as a text message and it said, hey, we just sent you $500, but it's not able to process, or USPS sent you a text message saying that there was a package to be delivered, but the package hadn't gotten here yet. Don't know how many people have ever gotten those text messages. Yeah, you've gotten them. Yeah, again, be careful of those and making sure that you link them back to the proper government services when you're doing it. And also empowered within the family resource management to be debt-free and have sufficient savings and investments, which we've been looking at, so that you're able, when you have a family, to leave a legacy for them as well. So here are some family roles that we want to look at quickly. So when we talk about family roles here, we're looking at the family overall, but also looking at, one, the family has to share and perform home tasks. So whether or not this is stuff that is going to be paid for, that somebody will come in and assist with, or this is something that we divvy up among different family members to say, you're doing tasks this or you're doing chores on the weekend. We all think about, what are the roles of each person in the family. We can also think about how we pool resources together, and then also assume, whoever is assuming the role of the breadwinner should also decide, this person is going to be, let's say, for example, be in charge of the savings and investments. How many persons' names are going to be relating to that savings or particular investments? And if we do invest in it, what is going to happen? Let's say, for example, is there an estate plan in place should somebody who is the breadwinner pass? Is there an insurance plan in place should, let's say, for example, the breadwinner passes as well? And what does that look like? Whether or not that looks like a living trust or a revocable living trust, either or either. Now, that will also help to meet the family needs when that person as a breadwinner is no longer there. But as a family, it's important to have those kind of discussions when you start looking at family roles within family resource management. So good management pretty much includes the ability to recognize resources, and also to use them wisely in terms of what they're intended to do and their overall purpose as well, to make sure that your family is getting the best of the best at the end of the day. I'm also planning methods in terms of what they're going to go about achieving each goal. So let's say, for example, they want to buy their 18-year-old a car or something. They can now think about, how are we going to go about doing that? Do we need to put some money down, and how much do we need to put? Are we going to match this kid by having him work at 17, 16? And if he starts working, how much is he able to save, and we'll match whatever it is there. So you have to start thinking about what methods can you come up with. Also interpreting the kind of home that will be satisfying to each member of the group, because that becomes a big thing, especially when you think about family size. Is everybody having their own room to themselves? Are people going to share rooms? And if they're going to share rooms, what does that look like? Is it an apartment style? Is it a family size housing? Is it a townhouse? And so housing here becomes a big part of what it is in terms of planning for resources. Going to come back to that, but family resource management is concerned with, I've just listed 4 on here. One talks about nutrition, health, and wellness, because we do cover a lot about nutrition in terms of looking at foods and how much do we spend and how much do we allot for foods, and the nutritional value of foods as well for each family member. And that doesn't include, those people that might be specific going into, they're vegans or they're pescatarians or they have to take gluten-free, or they may have a particular illness and they have to be fed a particular way. Housing and eviction is also something that falls on the family and resource management in terms of making sure that you are either working towards owning a home or you're paying rent, and what does that rent look like, and if you do need rental assistance, where the community can be find that information. Another area to look at is also family and child development, and this looks at the families that planning together, moving towards how they use their employment, but also if they need a second job, they can take a second job on, but also what does timing look like. And then the last one that I listed was clothing, textile, and design, because we all have to spend some time examining, we all have to spend some time caring for, and also storing and making decisions about the clothes we wear, whether or not we're going to make those clothes to subsidize or to make it cheaper for itself, or we're going to go out to purchase clothes. And if we're going to go out to purchase clothes, are we going to purchase the clothes that are most expensive? Are we going to go purchase the most expensive shoes, right? And so we have to look within family resource management now. If we're doing that, can we afford to do like a recycle and repair, where we look at, we go to the thrift shop, for example. How many people have ever been to the thrift shop? Okay, anybody online been to the thrift shop? No. How many people buy brands? Some people just wear brands all the time. Okay. So how many people go into the store and be like, you know what, if I had a choice to buy a brand and the brand was selling for, let's say for example, it's Michael Kors. Michael Kors is selling for $1,500, but Ross has something similar. It doesn't look the same way. Ross has something similar because Ross has like a trickle down where the fashion went up, but the season's completely passed, so they have it now on sale, and it's going for, let's say, $200. How many people go buy that 200 versus 1,500 from the outlet where it's sold? How many people have compare the prices between the outlet and Ross sometimes? So that's what family resource management goes back to, looking at when you talk about in the area of clothing, textiles, and design, and making sure that you're making those decisions and not just being loyal to a particular, and it works the same way when you look at foods, because a lot of times, unconsciously, we are brand loyal to foods and we don't know, right? And I'm not talking about, like me growing up, and it was a thing where I'm lactose intolerant, but I had to be drinking milk like the whole time, right? So every time my grandmother prepare food, it's like, okay, you're gonna drink a glass of milk. And no matter how you got sick, you're gonna drink that milk today, right? But Back then, it wasn't all of these stuff where, you have gluten-free, lactose intolerant and all of these. No, she never figured that out. So it was like, you go drink that milk today, or you're not moving from the table. So I just had to suffer the consequence at that point. But today, we have all of these different things that are great for our kids. But we just have to learn how to use them and how to appreciate them as well, to make sure that our family is capitalizing on the best way forward when you look at resource management and utilizing those resources, not only human resources, but non-human resources within our community as well. So let's go back and look a little bit at our psychological needs, and Dr. Littles is going to talk a little bit about this for us.
So I'm going to continue pretty much where Dr. Anderson left off, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what managing resources and stress. Because when we look at the student who decided that they sought this job for 50-something thousand dollars, and they realize that they're not getting that money, but they've already made all this plan of everything that they're going to be buying, and they already probably borrowed some money to buy all of this, then that leaves them at a stressful situation. But it doesn't only happen to teenagers, it happens to us as adults, where we started buying stuff before we get our paycheck, right? And we decide to buy and buy, and we shop, we sometimes borrow the money and get ourselves in a financial bind. And what happens after that? What comes in? Stress, right? The stress of where am I going to find the money to pay all of that? And so today, before I talk about the physiological needs that we are going to be looking at that can lead to death, we're going to talk about managing that stress. And in managing that stress, one of the things that you're going to have to think about is taking yourself out of stressful situations. So although I'm not a finance person here today, I'm going to talk about managing your money. And in managing your money, you're going to be managing stress. So you're going to plan a budget. Plan that budget, and in that budget, you're going to talk about how much money you're getting, net pay. Because a lot of times people look on the gross pay, all that money that they're getting, and forgetting about that money that Dr. Choi just spoke about, that the government is going to take out, the local taxes is going to be taken out. So let's look on your net pay and what you have to use. And so in order to do that, you're going to eliminate stress. So then you start thinking about, what is my diet going to look like? What food am I going to be prepared? So a lot of times we don't look and combining everything together to say, oh, I need a balanced diet. I need to work on it. You're just thinking of what it is that I want to eat. And so you go and you pick up something unhealthy because it may be cheaper. But then probably if you had decided to go to the grocery store and pick up those food items and bring it home and prepare that balanced meal, then you will be pretty much having everything that you need. So in order to manage your stress level, you also need to look on exercising, all right? You also need to look at getting enough sleep. And we talk about managing stress, but we have all these gadgets that we use so often, and we spend so much time on the gadget, and that helps us because we're not resting, we are not getting enough rest. So a part of Maslow hierarchy, the very beginning of Maslow hierarchy of needs, he speaks about your physiological needs. And it is important to note that in order for us to reach self-actualization, we need to therefore pass the stage where the need for food. Now, I used to tell my kids when they were younger, it says, you need to get food. It doesn't mean that I have to buy brand name food. It doesn't mean that I need to get you brand name clothing. It doesn't mean that you are going to get a king size bed. It therefore means that I am making sure that your physiological needs, those needs, they are met. And so when we talk about food, we need to look at growing our own food, getting the food that is healthy for us, instead of thinking of going to the store and, let's say, fast food places. A lot of people spend a lot of money at fast food places. And if you really think about the money that you spend, a family of five going to McDonald's to pick up food, think about it. How much money do you spend buying food instead of going to the grocery store? picking up something that you picking up your fruits, you picking up your veg, you pick up some ground meat, you pick up all the things that you need. I'm gonna go with whole wheat pasta because I'm talking about healthy eating. And then you'd be surprised that it's 1/3 of the money that you spend because you're making sure that a balanced diet is there and you are providing for your physiological need. Water. I'm going to talk about water, but it's going to also tie into the protection for extreme temperature. Right now, it is probably 105 outside. And so I am going to implore and ask you that you make sure that you are hydrated. Make sure we say that you're supposed to get how many cups of water each day? How many cups are we supposed to have? Who knows? How many cups?
12 cups?
Well, we could go to 12 now. It's really 8 cups of water, but because it is so hot, 12 cups would be fine. Just make sure that you stay hydrated. And so each time you go out, so I walk with my cup today because I know, because I'm walking from the car into the library. By the time I got here, I needed to hydrate myself. So water is important. Now, water don't only come in its natural form. You could go and buy a watermelon, you're still getting water from it. Cantaloupe, those are still water, you're still. And so watermelon is pretty good for you, especially right now. And that's a part of what your need is. Now remember, if these needs aren't met, they could lead to death. And so that's something that you have to think about. We talk about oxygen, we need oxygen for life. But because there's so much chronic disease out there, make sure, especially now, that you're walking with your pump if you're asthmatic. Make sure that you are doing your breathing exercises. Make sure that you're taking care of all of that. For me, when it gets hot, it's like I can't breathe, so I cannot leave my pump. I have to bring it along with me, especially now. So make sure that you are taking care of that, protecting yourself from extreme temperature. So right now, please wear cotton clothing if you can. Wear cotton clothing. Don't go out with a whole bunch of clothing on. The minimal. You're home. Make sure that you have minimal clothing on so you're helping yourself to stay cool. Not everybody has central air in their home. So I'm saying from a wellness perspective, make sure that you're looking at that aspect of your life and trying to make it better. The fan, make sure your fan is on, it's running, and then you're drinking water, you're staying hydrated, because those are important needs that you have. Remember that although Maslow hierarchy wants you to reach self-actualization, if you have not reached past the first stage, you cannot reach self-actualization. So today I want to talk about managing your stress level, making sure that you're making healthy habits, and those healthy habits will help you in the long run. So Dr. Choi spoke about the many different avenues. If you go back a slide, he talked about the supplies, housing, eviction, family development, clothing, all of those. If you are working towards a self-actualization, help yourself by making sure you're physically prepared, physically, socially, emotionally prepared for your family member, not just yourself, but your family members. And every family in your household has a specific need, right? So start thinking about what are the needs of the people in my household. There may be someone that's diabetic. They can't eat everything. There may be someone that has a high blood pressure, hypertensive. That's another thing. So when you go shopping, there's two things you're going to be looking for. There may be more than two, but I'm going to talk about two. One, you're going to look at the price. But two, from a nutritional perspective, you're going to look on the label. Can I eat this? Is this supposed to be for the people in my household? Is there too much sodium in this? So those are the things that you're going to be looking at. And thank you for having me as part of your team today. And like I said initially, what we're going to be looking on is how I can partnership with the library, and Dr. Choi is going to be here. So processes of management, are you coming back, Dr. Choi? Okay, so Dr. Choi is going to be talking about how you look on the processes of management and what we do next. And make sure when you're budgeting, in your budget, start thinking about a healthy diet and making sure that you have food from the food groups in the right proportion. Thank you.
All right, so our process of management are 5 on here, and so the first one up about planning, and so within founder resource management, it's important that we plan as a first management process. So if you have a project to do, you would sit down, you would plan out, identify what the needs really are and what am I going to be doing today. Let's say, for example, you're going to go buy a car, right? Don't just show up at the car dealership oblivious as though, I'm here to get a car today. I'm gonna trade my car in, not knowing, they're gonna take advantage of you, to be honest with you, right? And if they can get you to trade your car in for little or nothing, you will leave that lot with your car little or nothing, but you're also going to leave with a negative equity that's gonna be transferred onto the new loan that you're going to have, so you have to make sure you always have a plan in mind. So when you think about planning family resource management here, it talks about planning not just with a car, but also with your family as well, sitting down and making sure you have a plan. Identify what those concerns are and how you're going to meet those concerns. Do some research before you do anything. If you're going to make a purchase, do a comparison, Amazon has it for this, but if I click on the buy, when you go in to add it to your cart, it will say we have some used ones. It might be $10 less because the packet was open, but it's still good, right? Same thing in the store. Sometimes somebody might have returned a particular product. They have to discount it out, but it is still good quality. So you have to think about that. It's the same thing when you go into Wise. Anybody go to Wise grocery store? Wise? Y'all don't like Wise? Okay, not endorsing Wise or anything, but Wise is right beside me. Relative, so I'm like, usually it's easy for me to get to Wise. But other stores do have the same thing. Target has the same thing, and Walmart has the same thing I'm gonna talk about. But what happens here is if you go into these stores, you'll recognize there are 3 different types of brand. There's a national brand, there is your regular wholesale brand, and there's also what is considered your generic brand. So your regular store brand here is going to be, if you're going to Wise, it's gonna be Wise, right? But your national brand could be Kraft. Your generic brand probably don't have any names on it. So when you're planning out which one of these are actually cheaper to make a purchase from, do I go with my store brand? Let's say, for example, if I go to Walmart, Walmart brand is what? Great value. Yeah, y'all don't know, y'all need to know these things, right? Because that's how you compare prices. So you go in there and you compare the great value price, right? Versus, what is the regular price for bread? From like one of these, like Sunbeam, Sunshine, one of these big places that make bread versus, the great value bread, it's probably going to be $1 off, it's less. But is the quality different in any way? No, and if you stock up and buy 2 extra ones, you can put it in the freezer, and then that lasts for a little bit of period, that you can put it back out of the freezer and use it also. So again, planning, seeing where the money is going and how much it is that you're locked in to identify and meet those needs. The next thing that you want to do is make sure that you have some kind of organization towards it. Don't just buy the first thing that they tell you, because you get on Google Flights and it says there's only 2 seats left. Lie, there ain't no 2 seats left. There's much more seats left. So even if somebody bought those 2 seats, later on when you go back, they're gonna say you have 5 more seats left. So don't ever feel pressure to be like, it says 2 items left. They do it on Amazon a lot. Don't know if you've been on Amazon and there's only one of these items, they pay like, but I really need it. Right, you ain't needed that bad because it's gonna be there tomorrow. Don't let them trick you. They have more on Amazon. Anybody ever been to Amazon warehouse? They got lots of them, don't let them lie to you. They have lots of them items, they just put it as one. It's really a marketing ploy to get you to buy it, to think there's no more. There's a scarcity in the product, really, when there is none, right? Because I've been to the airport before where they tell me that there's 2 seats left. And I got on that plane and I was like one of 5 people on that plane. I'm like, oh, they told me it was 2 seats, but I can move seats right now. Ridiculous, right? So the market itself creates a scarcity within your mindset that you're like, I got to get this flight right now while it's still high. So think about those things when you talk about organizing. Another one looks at implementing. So once you've organized and you've made your comparison shopping and stuff, it's important to go ahead now to see how you're going to carry out this plan. Which card are you going to use? Which card do you get the best interest rate back for? Don't just use any and any card to pay for stuff. Think which ones you're getting rewards for and how you can use those rewards. I know a lot of like airlines now offer specific cards to their stuff, which gives you frequent flyer miles and all of those stuff. Think about what works for you. You don't need to apply for every store credit card that is there, right? But if you do have your own credit card with Capital One or Discover or something, do they offer a percentage back every time you make a purchase for a flight? And how can that contribute or add up over a period of time for you? So make sure within that implementing process of you making the purchase that you've thought about that also. Stay in control. Don't ever give up the control to the next person, to the person who is on the other hand of the seller. Make sure that you're 10 steps ahead of the seller. You go to purchase a house and you're looking at this house, for example, for your family, you're like, I really love this house. But when you walk in, I will assure you, when you walk in, and even if you love the house to the max and you didn't find any fault, bring a tennis ball with you and drop it on the counter, and you'll see if you ain't got no fault in that house, right? If it start rolling, you know something wrong, right? Put it on the floor in every room and see if it start rolling. You'll see if something is wrong. Drive by there in the night, right? Go by there in the night when the realtor is not with you, because the realtor knows the time to bring you back. Drive by there in the night about after 10 and see how many people are on the road hanging out. Best that, and especially if you're going to an apartment, think about those things. See who is hanging out in the staircase. Because especially if you're going to get off late, think about those things. Make sure that you're always in control. Don't let anybody influence you or tell you that, hey, we're going to cut the price down just so you can make a decision right now. I was recently in the market to buy a car, and the guy went from 1,500 at about 3 p.m. and it was about 6 p.m. And I was about to make that final decision, and he was down to about 900 and something dollars. I was like, no, I'm good. Right, money wise. So one of those things.
Monthly?
Yeah, monthly, sorry, yes, monthly. So monthly, he was like at 1,500 when he started out, and then that was at 3 p.m. By 6 p.m., because they closed at 8, at 6 p.m. he was down to $900. By the time he was still trying to make me that offer to make the purchase. But I walked away because one, always bring your phone into those things with you and double check 72 months times whatever they're offering monthly and see how much you're actually going to pay and see if you're carrying any negative equity, especially with that trade in, if you're doing that trade in, and how much before you go. That's why I said advance planning. Before you go, if you're even buying that car, make sure that you've Kelly Blue booked it, or make sure that you've looked up the facts on that car and how much it's actually sold for. You can do that through Carvana also to see what the value of it is so that you know if they're undervaluing the car as well and just building back something for themselves. So always do those homework. And then the last part of that is making sure that you've evaluated your overall decision. Has this been a good decision for you? Did you make the right choices? If you didn't make the right choices, how can moving forward you can make those right choices as needed to make sure that you don't fall under the pitfall of some sort within the consumer economic realm, but also to make sure that as a family, your unit is moving forward when you look at resource management and capitalizing on the resources, both locally and within our community as well. My name is Troy Anderson. Thank you so much for your invite and for participating today. Does anybody have questions?
Thank you for
Thank you.
being here.
So if you don't have any questions, my email is standard, tanders4@umd.edu. You can feel free to shoot me an email. Dr. Little's email is dlittles@umd.edu, and Dr. Little's specialty again is on, I'll just tell you,
Food, nutrition, and wellness.
food, nutrition, and wellness. So if you do have questions,
Wellness.
the extension offices are located both here in St. Mary's and in Calvert, most counties do have an extension office through the University of Maryland, and they do send different local agents to work in these offices to help the community in terms of answering questions or directing them to different community resources that they can use. Yeah.
Okay, I just had a couple questions. So I want to know, like, what are like specifics that someone could invest in? Did you say like invest early?
Mhm. So, you could invest in you could do a CD.
A CD?
Yeah.
You have 401k.
Oh, okay. You said 401k?
Yeah, or some places it's 401k, other places for
I think it varies with families. I think it would be just a 401k for us.
401k.
Okay.
The IRA.
Anything you're gonna invest in, please read up about it first and make sure that it's a reputable site that you are pretty much going to make sure it is something that's it's a household name and not just something new on the market, because there's a lot of scamming going on and stuff. And as I said, we have talked about scamming before, so just be mindful of that.
Yeah, because people invest in, like, I would tell you they go invest in cryptocurrency, but a lot of people get scammed out of that, so you have to be careful. With cryptocurrency, if you don't understand it, I wouldn't suggest doing it. But you can do like mutual funds. You can open a money market account and they'll be able to help you in terms of, like saving, but also getting, capitalizing on interest rates and stuff. Capital One just started one with Capital 360 savings, but you have to like link your direct deposit to that, in order to earn like a high interest rate on there. And then they also pay you out for after like 2 months or whatever it is that you had in terms of your direct deposit. Also you can think about like doing a hedge fund. Not sure if you've heard of that. You can think about doing a hedge fund as well. But as Dr. Little said, it's really important, regardless of the investment that you choose for yourself, that you're making sure that you've done the research on there, because there are people who will let you sign stuff and then that money just going directly into their pocket. So be very careful. You can always sit down with a local advisor at the bank, and sometimes some of these local banks also have different stuff. I know Chase does one where it's like an ETF with Chase, so you can always check them out as well. And Chase is pretty reputable, but what happens is that they've locked your money in for I think 7 months. So you can't touch it any at all, and then you have to sign out at the end of the 7 months, or if you miss the date on the 7th month, it automatically renews. So you also have to be careful of those automatic renewals that are on there as well. Is there anything else, Dr. Littles?
No, she said she had. Was there?
That's on one.
Okay, yeah, and properties are a big thing to invest in also.
Yes.
So if you
That's
can, because you
good.
get pull lots of equity out of property.
Yes, so,
Oh, okay.
yeah, so if you wanna go into real estate is a good way of investing, because especially where the market is right now, it is good if you can find a property. It doesn't have to be an expensive property right now. And you buy that property and start investing, rent that property out. And, so it becomes, it's earning its own, you're not paying for it, but you're renting it out. And afterwards, you take out all that equity, you can buy another property sometimes afterward, and you take equity from that property. And so you can start an empire by doing that. A lot of people are doing real estate, starting very small and then building. The course isn't too hard to get into too, so that's something that you wanna think about. That's a good way to invest.
Yeah, lots of savings account have the same CDs I talked about. You know what a CD is, right?
A CD.
CD, certificate of deposit. So a lot of them do that, and they provide like a yield in terms of the interest itself. So you can check with the local bank. If you have a savings account, a lot of them do that as well. It doesn't provide a whole lot in terms of turnover, but I mean, my grandmother used to say every nickel may come up for me, and every small portion really adds up. So over time,
Yeah.
it does add up, and when you get, 20 years down the line, you're like, I had all of these different areas that I was investing in as well. And insurance policy, life insurance policy is also another thing that you can think about as well. Because some of those life insurance policy, again, you can pull them later on if you've been investing quite some time. So if you needed a down payment for, like a house or something, you could always go back and pull those out. So yeah, well, pull some money from it, because you've been investing over a time.
Well, whatever you do, start, make sure that you're saving something, the 50-30-20 rule of saving is important. Yeah, so 50% of it is your needs, 30% is your wants, and 20% goes towards your saving. And so it doesn't matter how much money you earn, make sure you're saving that 20%.
Any questions on that? No. All right, well, thank you all. I will wrap up. And I think this is your next.
All right, great, thanks, everyone.
All right.